Yeah, I'm good now.
Okay, cool.
Oh yeah, what did
I just,
you what did you think about the concept?
um, well, I call it the spiritual PowerPoint. I thought that it was really interesting. And I thought that the spiritual development aspect of this week was really cool because it like
Hmm.
coincided with the assignment um for the paper that's due tomorrow. So that was really cool. The moral development was really dense but really interesting. Um, I really liked, I don't know if I'm like pronouncing his name right, but like Piatt's theory of
Oh,
moral
like
judgment.
Piaget or something like that.
Yeah,
Piaget, yeah.
Piaget, uh, theory of moral judgment with
Hmm.
um the morality of constraint in like 7 or 8. And then transitional from like 8 to 10, and then
Yeah.
autonomous, where it's like, oh, the punishment should fit the crime. I thought that sounded like the um, most right. Like, I don't know, with all of these lessons, I just reflect on myself and
Right,
how
yeah.
I felt as a kid, and that's definitely how I do things. Like rules were just very non-negotiable, cannot change. And then the older you get, the more they do. So yeah, it's cool just seeing like no experience is really original.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's super neat. Do you like even now, do you like have a lot of exposure to like do you hang out with kids very often? Like do you get to see this now, do you think?
I don't anymore, but I worked with kids a lot in a job that I had.
Hmm.
Well, I left over the summer, but I worked at a unit with kids from like 8 to 17 and definitely saw that a lot. It was a really interesting community dynamic because they all just like, there's a big board with 18 kids of all ages, and the younger ones were definitely more reluctant with rules and weren't as sneaky, whereas like the 13-year-olds were very
Yeah.
much like, I hate you, let me do what I want.
Yeah.
No one's gonna care, this and that. Like can't do anything about it. So definitely.
Yeah.
How
What
about
what
yourself?
job was that? I'm curious.
I worked at um an eating disorder treatment center in Dallas.
Oh, super
It's
cool.
called
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called Eating Recovery Center, and it also like dealt with a lot of like comorbidities like anxiety and OCD. And then I moved back to this area over the summer in July. But it was a cool job, albeit like really intense. That was how I spent my gap year.
That is an intense gap year for sure. Yeah, it's not really like it's not a rest really.
No,
Yeah.
not a rest.
It's not much
I
of a
think
rest.
this is peaceful, so
Yeah, compared to yeah, last semester.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
a lot.
um I don't work with, I definitely don't work with kids that have eating disorders or anything, but I do like every Wednesday night I'll serve at my church and I serve with like fifth and sixth graders, so I guess they're like 10, 11-ish. Um, or like they're turning 11 and 12, I think is what they're it's happening. So they're like right entering that autonomous morality stage. Um, and I get so frustrated whenever I work with them because they're just so annoying and they're like so disrespectful. Like I see all my like other peers working with the other age groups that are younger and they're like the kids are so sweet and they're just like funny and they're having a good time. They're like just playing games. But everybody in the fifth and sixth grade group is like just so disrespectful. Like I can like ask them to do something and they'll just like look me in the face, look me right in the eye and then just do the opposite. Like and I guess like that's just kid behavior, but to me like it's just kind of baffling because like if I was to have like a congregation of adults around me, like they would certainly not do that. Like they would probably pay attention to be respectful. But these kids like 11 and 12 are like they just disrespect just, for the sake of disrespecting, it feels like.
Yeah, almost like testing. And I totally know
Yeah,
exactly like that look of just that stare where it's like
yeah.
try me, like see if you could get me to do this. And I agree, like at church, like with adults, I mean, my mom would really lecture me if I ever acted that way. I can just hear it now.
Yeah,
Be
yeah,
in a
yeah.
lot of trouble.
I think that's super accurate. You saying, testing like that. That's something my wife works with me, and that's something she has to like remind me of all the time. Is like to not. She's like family and human, so she like loves working with kids and stuff. She has to just like remind me, like, yeah, they're just testing you. Like they need something. They need like some sort of love or some sort of attention, and that's like their way of kind of coaxing that out of you. Um,
Yeah, that's a really positive way to see it. Um,
yeah, it's hard, but
and
it is positive. It's hard to think that way.
yeah, it's hard to think that way in a minute where it's like, yeah, I just want to leave, but need they need help. And yeah, I think like most testing as well, like sort of the autonomous aspect of like
Hmm.
rules can be changed, maybe they can get away with it.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, one thing I thought it was interesting from this PowerPoint is like one of the slides said that the reasoning behind a behavior is critical to understanding whether or not that behavior is moral or immoral. Um, and that was a little bit convicting because especially like whenever I think of like the fifth and sixth graders I volunteer with, kind of like what we were just talking about, with like the testing sort of. But kind of like beyond that, a lot of their reasoning behind their behavior is probably like stems from, and I know for a fact it like stems from their families back home. Like they probably like need attention or something like that they aren't getting at home. So like they kind of go to church on Wednesday nights to try and get that out of the leaders and stuff like that. So like a discipline, searching for discipline.
yeah, and I think that any way that they can get that is great. And I'm always fascinated with the more that this class has gone on, just how much everything builds on each other with family and all these experiences and how mine's powerful and it's really, really crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's fun to think or to like see it, apply in real life, to other people, but also like to ourselves, to like think back to when we were kids and see
Yeah,
it
and I
all
think
make sense.
yeah, and I think that church leaders and like group leaders, I know from myself that discipline and guidance meant a lot.
Hmm.
Um, and I feel like in that environment, it's always done from like a place of love, which is even better. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. With that,
yeah.
I'm assuming you are a Christian, just kind of some of the things you said. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yep. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Really like reflective. I haven't thought about my own development in a long time. Um, so it was really cool. I thought that the stages were also neat. And identified with a lot of them.
We're talking about the spiritual development stages.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
okay, okay. Yeah, I'm tracking.
um, yeah, I thought that the later stages were really interesting, like the journey inward,
Hmm.
um, and like a loss of certainty, and like all this questioning and like self-assessment, because that was like a time that I was at recently, and then
Yeah.
um, reflected, and I guess got to like stage 5, but it took a lot of time and thinking, um, and prayer. But it's really interesting just having all of this written out,
Mhm.
um, in such like a logical way. When in my head, I think about it so emotionally. um, so it's really cool, and almost how those kinds of like that uncertainty sometimes is normal. Like I'll feel really like guilty about that. And it seems like it happens often, and give yourself grace about it, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I think that this cycle, the cycle of stages. I really liked the way that he put it together, but I think that I think it applies to everybody, and I think that I think another important thing is like to remember is that there. I don't think there's like an end point to the cycle. Like I don't think that you can achieve like ultimate spiritual development. I think that like we're always growing and we're always like kind of revisiting some of the stages that we've been at in the past, which I think is a super cool, humbling thing to think about. You said you feel like you've recently gone from stage 4 to 5. Is that what you said?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
kind of.
So you kind of went like through the wall experience. That's what they call it, I think, on the slides.
Yeah, we went through a wall. Um, yeah. The job that I had was a lot, made me like question things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I left, moved back home, and kind of rested, um, and got through that wall, um, and really thought about things, um, and got humble, and
Yeah.
then got to stage 5, the journey onward, which I'm really thankful for, and definitely an emphasis on the renewed sense of like God's acceptance. I guess with so many like children in such a dark place,
Yeah.
was and which was, I guess, could be seen in such different ways when a lot of them were going through like stage 1.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
a lot of kids were very religious, with like seeking faith, or just were so helpless,
Mm-hmm.
which I know is also one of those stages too.
Yeah.
Um, I think I had trouble with like my mentality around that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but figured it out, and I'm sure something like that will happen again, because I like how you worded that it is a cycle that just repeats itself, doesn't
For
really
sure.
end.
Yeah. What is where you are now? And I guess, you don't have to self-disclose if you don't want to, but I'm curious
Oh,
what the journey outward looks like practically for you right now.
um, journey outward. Hmm.
It's a hard question. There may not be like a simple answer.
Oh, no. Like, and I guess I'll just be myself instead of like when I answer this. It feels really great. It feels like in the book required for the paper, it was kind of described as like having like a new relationship again, that
Hmm.
kind of like joy and getting swept up,
Yeah.
and dedicating more of myself to like reading the Bible in the morning on like the weekends before church and praying more and um being more thankful. So
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
I like the wording you said, like being swept up. I think that's pretty accurate. I think like you always hear of like the concept of like a spiritual high or something like that, you know. I think that this is certainly probably the stage that that happens in the most. Yeah. Kind of like the infantile, not exactly, it's kind of like an infantile stage of your, you know, your understanding of God and your faith. It's like really sweet, you know, something really sweet about it.
yeah.
Um, Something I thought was kind of interesting. Oops, actually, close it. Something I thought was kind of interesting about the spiritual development slides was,
Sorry.
um, no, you're good.
Yes. Hello. Sorry. Yeah. No, because I'm almost done. Sorry.
You're good. I'll try and wrap up. I guess we're almost done. But yeah, I'll try and wrap up kind of quickly. Um, One thing I thought that I kind of liked, I thought was interesting from the slides, the spiritual development slides, was like that every single slide, stage one and stage two, stage three, so on, it says that faith is blank. So it'll be like for stage one, it's like faith is the discovery or recognition. And then like for the last one, it's like faith is reflecting God. I think that's a super interesting mindset or interpretation of what faith is. The way I kind of like read that on the slides is like that you have faith at every single stage of development, you know, even from stage one, you know, there is a faith. It's just like, you know, I guess less developed.
Yeah, I
I thought
think
that
that
was interesting.
that's yeah, it's really interesting. I think that it's great how like yeah, there's faith at each stage, like it's always there.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's a really great way to see that. Um,
I think I
and it's
often,
really
yeah, go ahead.
oh, sorry, it's just saying it's really cool. That's all.
I think that I often like, you know, will like doubt my faith or like be kind of disappointed in my own faith because like I compare it or to others, you know, and their great faiths and stuff, or I think, you know, like if I had true faith, like I probably wouldn't be doing things I'd be doing, you know, I'd like probably read my Bible more or something like that, you know. But you know, like we are called to, called to have great faith, but you know, also, you know, we're told that faith the size of a mustard seed, you know, can move mountains. So I think that it's a tricky balance because like I want more faith, you know, but at the same time, you know, my faith, God is sufficient enough to meet me, you know, in my unbelief and in my lack of faith. I think that's a pretty sweet thing.
Yeah, that's really sweet and really well said. And it's really hard to not compare yourself to
Yeah.
um because there are people who are so dedicated and it's like, oh, like things that I don't do every single day. Um, but just kind of saying to yourself, that doesn't mean that I like care less or
Hmm.
anything.
Yeah.
Um, I guess it's sort of like anything with like mental health in general. Um, like having expectations of like being consistent all the time
Hmm.
with
Yeah.
you're like always happy or always talking to someone like friends and family. And it's hard. It's hard to not feel bad about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, no, yeah, like I like that. Just like, you know, our spiritual health, our mental health is also not like a straight and narrow kind of thing, you know. It's very much about, you know, the ups and downs, hills and valleys. I love that. That's super true.
Yeah.
Did you have somewhere that you were needing to be? How, wait, how long has it been? I can't even.
I think think it's been about 20 minutes now. That's just my dad.
Okay, try.